Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, we follow up on our Bitcoin coverage with a scandal that has a $500,000 price tag. Then, it's our best practices for encryption, and we answer a whole slew of audience questions. Plus, it's our first live war story. All that and more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome back to TechSNAP. It's our 10th episode, and it was recorded live on June 16th, released Friday, June 17th, 2011. And my name is Chris, and joining me on the Skype line there is Alan. Hey there, Alan. Welcome back.
Hey Chris, how are you?
I've been good. How have you been? Have you been Bitcoining all week?
I have, actually.
Do you want
to kind of crazy.
Do you want to give folks a heads up on the programming note for next week?
Yes, special programming note. Next week, TechSNAP will be live on Wednesday at 1 p.m. instead of the regular slot of Thursday at 1 p.m.
Yep, over at jblive.tv.
Yes.
Yeah, and
so
of course,
next week, make sure you tune in a day early.
Yeah.
But
it'll be released at its
regular spot.
It'll be released at its regular Friday morning time slot, which is the new time slot for TechSNAP. And you know what? I don't give this site enough of a mention, but jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. We keep all that updated. You can go there and you can follow the latest show live times and release times. Now, Alan, we have a bunch of show today. We have some an interesting Bitcoin story follow-up, and then we've got a bunch of rockin' Q&A. And on the live stream here before the show, we were sort of just spitballing ways we could get even more interaction. And one of the things we've noticed is a lot of your emailing questions into techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com, which is awesome. Thank you, by the way.
Keep doing that.
But we're getting some questions that are very similar to other questions. And we thought it'd be really great if there was a way you guys could see what other people are submitting, either news stories or questions, and then vote on them. So just as an experiment, before the show, we launched a new TechSNAP subreddit, and we think this could be really awesome. So it's at reddit.com/r/TechSNAP or links.techsnap.tv. Right, Alan? links.techsnap.tv. And this is a Reddit subform, and you can go in here and you can see we've only got one link now because, we just literally launched this. But you can submit a question, you can submit a news story, whatever you want to get our attention. We're going to follow this, and in every episode, at least for the next month or so, we're going to feature at least one question and one news story from the Reddit feed. So if somebody submits something you like or something that's similar to what you already want to put in there, you can simply just click to vote up, and it'll register your vote, and then, of course, we will know that more than one of you is interested in that story, and it kind of helps us gauge the interest out there, and also it lets other people comment on your news story so we can all get other input. It sounds like it could be an awesome way to interact with the show, and if it's something that really takes off for TechSNAP, I think we'll launch it for all the shows. But if you guys don't like it, well, we're going to try it here, and then we'll maybe go with something else. But give that a shot. Links in the show notes for that, and we'd love to see you guys submitting questions, news stories, whatever. Right? Very cool.
Yes, because the other thing is sometimes we get an email question where we're like, well, I'm not sure how many other people are interested in knowing the answer to this.
Yeah, there are some questions we're hesitant to answer just because we only have so much airtime and we don't know. There's just not a way for us to know how popular it is, and this would be an awesome way.
Yes, if a bunch of people voted up, then obviously they want to know the answer.
Now, someone asked, how does this fit in with the Jupiter Colony thread? I still see the Jupiter Colony as a place to have conversations and like, hey, I came across this. What do you guys think? But you could still use that Reddit subform to call out links to your Jupiter Colony thread, or if you want to experiment with just having a conversation in there, that would be great. And the other thing is if you're in there, I think I'm going to try submitting our TechSNAP stories, or each episode release. I'm going to try submitting it to that Reddit subform. And if you help us vote that up, you never know, maybe a popular episode might make it to the front page of Reddit, and then we could get a whole bunch of new eyes on this show, and that would be really awesome. So let's give it a shot, and we want to hear what you guys think. Leave us a comment or start a thread in the Reddit forum and give us your thoughts. Alan, what do you say we move on to our first topic for today?
I think so, yeah.
All right, so this is, like I mentioned earlier, a follow-up to the Bitcoin-focused episode we did in TechSNAP 9. And, of course, you had to figure this was going to happen. Our first major Bitcoin theft occurred in this last week. And, of course, it's... Well, like anything Bitcoin, when they go big, they go real big. It's like some people are saying could be as much as $500,000 depending on the currency exchange for Bitcoin. And it also sounds like it could have been avoided. Alan, I'll let you share the details on the story because boy, I mean, this guy's got to be killing himself right now.
Yeah. So basically, the way Bitcoin wallets work is it's actually a public-private key pair. Or actually, there's a separate key pair for each transaction.
That way it's signed to the network, right? So the network can validate the transaction?
What happens when you send money, what you're doing is you're taking the block of Bitcoins that you're using and then signing them with the private key saying that, this proves that only the person who owns the private key for this current set of coins could do this.
Now, the Bitcoin software does all that. The Bitcoin network does all that for you. That's not a manual process, but it stores all of that stuff in the wallet.
But your keys for your transactions are on your computer in a wallet file.
Right.
Right. So by default, the client creates 100 keys. And then every time you use a key, it generates a new key on the end so that it has 100 ready to go.
Yeah.
And this is for a couple of reasons. Specifically, when you back up this wallet file.
Yeah.
In case because if you lose your wallet file, then the money you have in it is gone and you can't get it back. But neither can anyone else. The coins are just lost forever.
Right. It's like if you had a wad of cash and you ran it through the washing machine or something and it was ruined for some reason or whatever. Yeah. It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah. So anyway, when you back up your wallet file, the reason why we have keys for things that haven't happened yet is so that when you restore the backup, you still have the keys for those future transactions. Otherwise, everything that was not in your latest backup would be lost. But this way, up to 100 transactions forward from your backup are still reclaimable.
Huh.
But anyway, so if somebody's managed to steal your wallet.dat file, then they have the keys to all your money. And then they can use that to cryptographically sign a transaction, and send the money to themselves or somewhere else.
Right, and because the only ID on a Bitcoin transaction is that key, that public version of it, you don't really know who that money went to.
Exactly.
So now this...
But it's exactly the same thing that would happen if someone stole, the combination or the keys to your safe, or if, they stole your online banking password, they could log into your bank and...
Well, but some would argue that you could go to your bank and dispute it, and then they could enact some sort of fraud protection.
Transactions are irreversible, and there's no central authority to settle disputes.
Right.
Or forcibly undo a transaction.
But also that's its strength in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's a feature and a flaw at the same time. It's a trade-off. Mm-hmm. We trade off having some central authority to gain the fact that there's no central authority.
Right. That's right. both. It's it's like that by design, by intention. Yes. Now, do you believe the caveat that people are now throwing up online saying that maybe all of the story isn't 100% true? In fact, maybe somebody just because all of the Bitcoin transactions on the Bitcoin network are broadcasted, so you can see them. So all you would have to do is see a transaction that equated to about the money you want to claim was stolen, and claim that was the transaction being taken from you. There's no way to verify that was actually your money. And also some people are saying that the person making these claims has ties back to H.B. Gary, which we covered early on in TechSNAP, who's been discredited before. So there is some controversy around the story. Do you buy any of it, or do you think it's legit?
Mostly because there's no central authority. There's no way they could convince anybody to try to get the money back. But if they have some profit motive to discredit Bitcoin, then maybe. Or
the people they're trying to frame of going after their Bitcoin. Even if the core story is true or false, I guess the actual problem it uncovers is not really uncovering, but the problem it brings to light is real.
Yes, people have to realize that they have to protect this key ring because it's just like it's their passwords for this money.
Now, I know that we've gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of comments. People are getting into Bitcoin to watch TechSNAP. If people are starting to get some money in this wallet.dat file, people should seriously consider protecting it. Do you have any tips you want to go with?
Yeah, I'll do that in a second. We have a list of tips and things you can do or consider doing
you got a great list in the show notes
secure your Bitcoins. Mm-hmm. But specifically, I want to talk a little bit about what happened with the guy that got his coin stolen.
Oh yeah, lay it on me.
Specifically, he admits that after it happened, he scanned his computer and found a bunch of spyware, malware, and Trojans and stuff like that.
Okay.
So obviously his Windows computer wasn't secured very well.
So maybe a keylogger was on there or something.
Right, or something to that effect. The attack also possibly accessed that user's account at the mining pool. Because apparently when he logged into his mining pool account, the payout address had been changed.
Would you recognize? I guess he would. Now, so although the person making this claim, now I should say not. I didn't mean to discredit him because I was just pointing out that there was controversy. The person making this claim is an established person in the Bitcoin community for a long time, and that the point where he says he logged in and he saw that his payment address had changed. At first, I thought I would never notice if that happened, but then I thought this guy, he's really into it. He might notice that.
Well, if your money's been stolen and you go and look, you might say, look at that. Oh, that's not an address in my address book. That's not mine. So specifically, a lot of pools have for a while now offered the option to lock down your payment address so it can never be changed.
Yes. Now,
yes, a number of pools have that.
That sort of also, though, is one of the points of Bitcoin is you're able to change your address as much as you want to sort of keep yourself a moving target.
Right. By you using a different address for every transaction, you create that anonymity.
Right, exactly.
So it's kind of a trade-off. But, if it's just for your payouts on your mining, it does let people know how much you're mining and how much you're making. But as long as you send the money from a different address later, then it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to finish my thought. I didn't mean to discredit that guy. He is there's that. Continue on, sir. I didn't mean to cut you off.
So, yeah. So the guy's computer was compromised. And
that's what we think, right? That's what we think. We don't know for sure. I mean, he was just saying that he's just saying he did a scan. I mean, it's all very convenient, but it would seem like if you are keylogging, if you are a malware maker, why wouldn't you keylog for this stuff?
Yep.
And I will point out, I'm seeing a ton of people talking about their empty Gox accounts getting emptied.
Yep.
And in almost all cases, people are saying I use the same username and password that I use somewhere else.
Yep, we've talked about that 100 times. Don't do that.
We're going to have to do an episode just about password security, and I'm going to have to get out of my LastPass box because I live in SuperGenPass and LastPass, and that's just kind of my universe right now.
Right.
But we're going to have to at some point do a topic about password management because it sounds like now these people are losing money.
We've had a couple of good user submitted questions on tangentially related things like two-factor authentication, and it could tie back to our thing about RSA secure IDs and all that kind of stuff.
There you go. Now, do you want to cover anything else in the story before we get to the wallet tips?
That's about it. So now we'll get to how to protect your wallet.
Yeah, and I will not interrupt. I will save my method till you're done, sir.
Okay.
Proceed.
So first thing is use separate wallet files if you have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. Don't keep 25,000 coins or $500,000 all in one place. Right.
No kidding. It's like keeping all your money under one mattress.
Yeah. So, divide your money up into different accounts.
And I don't know, like you'll just have to come up with a system for how you would do that because I don't know how monetarily wise you want to split that up, but
yeah. Well, you can run the Bitcoin client and point it to a different config file and just you can do it a couple of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is make sure you back up your wallet file regularly because if you lose it, you lose all the money. It's gone.
Jeez, no kidding.
Nobody else gets it, but it's gone forever.
Yeah.
And if that happens a lot, it's going to add more pressure to the Bitcoin system because there'll be fewer and fewer coins because slowly more and more will be lost over time.
Yeah, that is an interesting problem, although you think that we've got to figure they factored that in, right, originally?
Yeah, well, the system is based on the fact that when that happens, it just means every other Bitcoin that isn't lost is worth more now.
More, and you can always split the Bitcoin up by the decimal. So
to 8 decimal places.
Yeah.
So specifically, the wallet file by default under Windows 7 and so on is stored in your application data folder with most of your other settings for all the other programs. And as one place a lot of people forget to copy things from when they reformat their computer.
Oh.
So make sure you back up your wallet file. The other thing is make sure you back it up regularly because remember we talked about that 100 key buffer?
Yeah.
Right? It generates 100 keys when you first run Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then every time you do a transaction, it adds a new one to the end of that list. If your backup is more than 100 transactions old, you won't have the keys for your newest transactions where the money is now.
And does a transaction include even just finding a new coin when you mine?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not just buying or selling.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Buying, selling, trading, any transaction at all, anything that affects your balance. So if more than 100 of those have happened since your last backup, you'll lose the newer stuff.
Do you know, can you back up that file on Windows when the Bitcoin client is running?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I'm not positive. I'm because file locking.
If you're using a proper backup program that does something like volume shadow copy,
yeah, you'd
then
be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess one person could consider Dropbox, though. You gotta wonder if people started storing things like this in Dropbox, and Dropbox's single key solution kind of makes this a risky thing.
That's
because
a bad plan.
It would just take one really greedy Dropbox user with that access rights to start fishing for wallet.dats in everyone's Dropbox.
Another thing you can do is in the configuration file for the Dropbox or the Bitcoin client, you can adjust that key buffer and make it more if you need, say, 250 keys. If you're doing a lot of transactions and you only back up once a day or something.
Huh. Now, is copying the Blisk in the chat room asks, is copying the file a way to keep the money? So then if somebody did the transaction, could you just restore the file? I think that's probably a common question.
Yes, because of the way the network works, when a transaction goes out, people who are mining are adding more blocks on top of it, and once there are blocks on top of it, you can't fork the tree very easily.
Right, and if somebody got in and did that $500,000 transfer, that transfer, the order of that transfer goes out over the whole network, and now the whole network is aware of that transfer, and so it doesn't matter what's in your wallet.
It's kind of spread slowly. So if at the same time someone tried to send that same 500,000 to somebody else, then the network would be diverged, and eventually, though, one of the chains would get longer, and that would be the accepted one.
Yeah.
So, for example, the guy that had his money stolen, he could go back to that part of the chain and try to send the money back to his new account, but he'd have to add more blocks to the system, more blocks to that chain than are on the existing chain, and that existing chain, because it's the globally accepted one, is like 10 gigahashes a second. So he'd have to have more than that to catch up.
Right, boy, that would be
pretty much impossible.
Yeah, that'd be impossible.
It's explained very well in the original document the original creator wrote. It's like a thesis or something, and it explains how it works in actually fairly plain English. Explains exactly how you prevent that double spending and so on.
Yeah.
So yes, double spending is prevented. So just restoring a backup of your wallet file doesn't give you back money you already spent.
Right. Any other tips?
Yeah. So your wallet is basically the same as your GPG keyring, which you use for encrypting files and emails and so on. So you want to make sure you protect that. One way to do that is something like a Truecrypt volume or some other whole disk encryption thing. With Truecrypt, you can create a special volume that's just for your Bitcoin wallet or something like that.
Yeah.
And that way, another thing is to maybe only run the Bitcoin client as a dedicated user that's really locked down. So you're not running any other applications as that user.
That's a great idea.
Right?
That's more dedicated. But if you just have a machine or two that are just dedicated to mining, you probably wouldn't care if they're on their own lockdown account.
Right, but I mean, like the client, when you're actually using it to like spend money, or the account that has all your money in it, you run that as a separate user so that, there's no browser with Flash running as that same user, so that if there's a Flash 0-day exploit that allows someone to remotely access your computer, they can't access the Bitcoin file.
Yeah. Boy, there's all kinds of fun you could have with that. You could do like a Linux live environment. You could do like a VM.
Exactly.
You could do all kinds of fun stuff to do that, kind of isolate that out.
Exactly. Every layer you add like that is just that little bit more security. It's called defense in depth.
And every little hoop you make them have to jump through makes it harder and harder. And honestly, a lot of these, what's so sad about a lot of these attempts is all low-hanging fruit. It's not hard stuff.
If you add enough attempts, they're going to go after somebody who's easier than you.
Yeah. And a lot of times,
you have a lot of money.
A lot of the times, the software they're using sucks too. So it's like they're just going to go for the easy ones because there's plenty of easy ones.
Yeah.
Maybe. Anything else?
As we learned from this incident and from the story about the banking Trojan last week, because even there we saw that the bank was able to claw back some of the money, but the bank wasn't actually able to get back all the money.
Right.
The contracting company still lost $300,000.
Yeah, and that was a modern day financial institution.
Yeah. So it's imperative to ensure that no one else can log your keystrokes to get your password for your mining accounts, sniff your traffic. So when your miners are connecting to the pool, or when you're logging into the pool, try to pick a pool that supports SSL. Right? So all your traffic back and forth is encrypted, so people can't be sniffing it.
Yes.
Also, make sure nobody's remotely controlling your machine with a Trojan. Because then, even if you have that Truecrypted mini partition with your Bitcoin wallet on it and so on, if it's mounted so that you can run the Bitcoin client right then, someone with a Trojan will still have access to it.
Right.
Or even if it's locked down in some other way, if they have remote control of your computer, they can physically click the buttons in your Bitcoin client and send the money to themselves.
Alan, I would say make sure your computer doesn't have Trojan or remote controlled and monitoring software is a good tip all the time, not just for Bitcoin miners.
Exactly. Right? Because this all applies to, your online everything.
Oh, yeah, everything.
Make sure that your computer is locked down. Actually, that's a really good question about that.
The difference with Bitcoin is that it's a tech-savvy thing, and so the people that are writing this kind of software are already hip to it, so they're already looking at it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's going to be like when you go after a specific financial institution, you have to go after that specific financial institution's site and the way everything's built and structured just for that one company. But with Bitcoin, that's money that it's just the same everywhere you go. A Bitcoin is a Bitcoin, so it makes it a lot easier and a lot bigger of a target. So you got to be more careful. Now, any other tips before I share mine? Because mine is completely different.
Yep. No, go ahead.
All right. Now, I'm not sure you should be like me and do what I'm doing, so I would love to hear your feedback on my approach. I'm mainly doing it as an experiment because I'm not using Bitcoin, at least not yet, as a serious money investment tool or anything like that. I'm just experimenting from a technology enthusiast standpoint. And so I'm using a site called mybitcoin.com, and it is an online bank for Bitcoin. It's your wallet in the cloud. It's a cloud hosted wallet. They give you a payment address. They are HTTPS only, and they're also, if you want, you can communicate with them over the Tor network for extra security, which is nice.
And to maintain that anonymity.
Right? Yep, exactly. And so you get a nice web UI where you can, they give you the option to easily send transactions to people through an address book built in where you just take from your balance and send them money. You also can have people send you money through it. It offers like on display how many Bitcoins you have and what their value is, and with a dynamically adjusting exchange rate. And that's all really, really nice. That's mybitcoin.com. And so what I do is I point the pools that I mine at, the payout addresses for those pools is mybitcoin.com's payment address. So when those pools, when they hit their auto payout threshold, the money just automatically collects in this mybitcoin.com, and I never have to worry about it. The problem with mybitcoin.com is that it's a bank and it's a central financial institution essentially, which is sort of counter what Bitcoin's all about. I'm essentially depending on some site that some people have brought online that are now holding Bitcoins for me. And I would not feel comfortable with that if I was dealing with any serious money, because I have no idea. And I would probably be going to Truecrypt and then, storing it on some sort of encrypted S3 bucket or something like that. I don't know what I would do, but with the small amounts I'm dealing with, and just to make things easier for me since I'm mining from multiple computers, it's nice just to send it all to one account. It's nice just to have it all online. I'd love to know what you guys think that are mining out there. Are you doing this? And what do you think of it? And why aren't you if you're not, etc.? Now, I know not everyone watching TechSNAP is a Bitcoin enthusiast, so we're just going to work it into the show for a little bit because it's hot. You know what I mean? And then probably down the road, it'll be an ongoing, reoccurring segment as just part of the show when there's something to talk about.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to freak out. We've got plenty of Q&A coming up, too. It's not all Bitcoin today.
Yeah.
But it's still a hot topic, and there's a lot to follow up on.
Because, the thing with a bank like that is you're not sure how secure it is, right? Somebody could hack in and take all the money. You're not secure. You're not sure about the people running it. They could just decide to run off with everybody's money. Well, it can be pretty tempting when you got a lot of people's money all in one place.
Yeah, and that's...
And they're not insured or anything like a regular bank.
Right.
So if something like that happens, you're just gone. And there's a bunch of different things.
But I think at the same time,
if the market actually matures, then I think the Bitcoin banks like that would end up being audited properly and making guarantees, and it's entirely possible they could get real insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and
if this takes off, then it can happen.
The same goes for all of the
the escrow services.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything else.
And all the exchanges, yeah. So
as this stuff matures, it will get much better. But right now, it's very immature and happening and changing really, really fast.
Over in the Jupiter Colony forum, Neen put a link in there to people who are going nutso and setting up their own new pool. And it's a community pool, and they're really proud of the work they're doing, and it is a lot, and they spend a lot of money. But at the end of the day, it's a bunch of guys in their garage on their Fios connection that are running a pool that now people are using to mine from. And while you're mining on a pool, they're storing your balance temporarily. So, you do have to kind of do a little more upfront investigation on what you're getting into, because anybody can set up anything. There's no regulations or anything like that. And, I say that, Alan, but then what am I? I'm a guy sitting in his garage right now running an online network. So the dynamics change a little bit on the internet when your overhead is down. So it's
when the barrier to entry is low enough that anybody can do it. Yeah, it just means you have to do a bit more due diligence.
You have to do your due diligence. That's just the way it goes. So I've tried mybitcoin.com, and so far I've been liking it. But I think if I ever got serious, I don't know, I'd be hesitant to keep at least a good chunk of change in there. Alan, I had an idea for our reoccurring Bitcoin segment. Are you ready to move on to it?
Sure.
All right. It's called the Bitcoin Blaster. And I did a little dance for you on the audio version. It was really fancy. It was probably the fanciest dance on the internet. And the Bitcoin Blaster segment is just going to be, as we go forward, when something worth talking about comes up, we're going to roll into the show. And I thought we would touch on our recent mining efforts, because after last week's show, both Alan and I kind of got even more excited about Bitcoin and kind of ratcheted up our efforts. And Alan, you went crazy, and I want you to share with the people out there what you've been doing this last week with Bitcoin.
Right. So when I first started, I just I have 2 GPUs in my machine. I'll fire them up. But they're NVIDIA 9800 GTs, so they only get about 27 mega hashes each. And then I'm like, before that, what I said, I have all these servers all over the globe, most of them with big multi-core processors.
Right.
So I fired it all up, but between all of them, I was only getting 25 mega hashes. And I was
it's astounding how inefficient CPU mining is compared to GPU. Yeah. Because I know from your hardware specs, you did that across a lot of hardware.
I did. I was burning up a lot of cycles.
And a lot of power.
Luckily, it was a lot of free electricity.
Oh, good. That's good.
But yeah, and then when I started doing it on my own computer, I was putting out a lot of heat. It was overheating my apartment.
Yes.
It was just not fun. And then, the difficulty goes up, and that means you're getting much less for the same amount of work, and it just wasn't working out.
Yeah.
But with a little investigation, and got together a small group of people, just myself and 2 friends as an investment pool, and we built a dedicated mining machine that has 3 really beefy video cards in it. And with a little bit of overclocking, we've managed to get 1,100 mega hashes per second.
So you've
1.1 gigahashes.
Yeah, you broke the gigahash mark. Congrats on your own.
And yes, and so we built up this machine. We ended up using Ubuntu instead of Windows, because
Windows sucks when you have multiple GPUs that aren't the same
especially
make.
Because we were using 2 identical GPUs, but then the third one was different.
Yeah.
And the ATI Windows drivers didn't like that at all.
I ran into the same problem myself, but under Ubuntu.
A slightly higher performance on Ubuntu as well.
Now, see, I have not played with enough to benchmark the differences, but that I already decided I was going back to Ubuntu. I'm running it in Windows 7 right now because I tried, they updated a new mining application on Windows. But now it's like I don't want to reboot because I don't want to stop mining. So I'm just waiting for the next time I have to reboot, and I'm going back to Ubuntu.
Yeah.
So how is it going? Have you gotten some...
It's been pretty good. Then we decided we installed it in my data center because it's cooled much better than somebody's house.
Yeah.
And we were already paying for the electricity there. So it's basically free electricity.
Or at least
and it's battery backed up, and it has a ridiculously fast internet connection and whatever.
They're just going to sit there and run. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it has remote reboot in case it hangs or something, and all these other things.
If somebody out there honestly provided server hosting with GPUs, I would probably go for it, because all of the GPU hosting out there I can find, A, it's crazy expensive, and B, it's all NVIDIA.
Because that's the server, like the rack mountable cards that are designed were all by NVIDIA.
Right.
I thought about doing that, but every time I think about it, I'm like, if I buy all these servers with all these GPUs, why would I rent them out to other people when I could just keep them for myself?
Yeah, that's the thing. You could actually,
So basically, it would have to be that you would pay me more than the Bitcoins were worth right now on speculation that they'll be worth more later.
Right. There actually is a service out there that does that, but it's just like that.
Yeah. If you're interested, I'm willing to do that for people, because we have the space in the data center and the expertise on building the machines and setting them up and making them work. But it's not going to be instant payout.
Right. It's going to have to,
If it was, then I would just keep all the hardware for myself.
That's funny.
With the rig we built, it's going to take about 60 days to pay out.
If the exchange starts going back up again, that might shorten a bit.
That was already our 60-day thing. Unlike most calculators that you see out there, we actually factored in the difficulty going up every 2 weeks.
Good, yeah.
Most people forget about that.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's going up at a quick pace right now because so many people are mining.
Yeah, it jumped from like 560 to 877,000. It's quite a big jump. I
don't have, my story's not as epic as yours.
Right.
Mine's although mine is somewhat of a success. I've been fortunate because I've been able to use a lot of the hardware we use for the studio, and but that means like right now I'm not hardly mining at all because all of the equipment's being used for recording. So during the day, my with the machines I have in my office, my mega hash rate is around 500 to 600, and then at night it usually crawls up to about a little over 800 mega hashes a second. But the big success story I have is, I talked about it last week, I have right here a Radeon 5830, which isn't like the most awesome mining card ever. It's sitting close to that cost versus return ratio. I get about 235 mega hashes a second on this card without any overclocking. So I haven't overclocked it yet. But the cool thing about this card is I paid for it, in essence, with Bitcoin. So this is a physical good now that I acquired with Bitcoin, but I kind of cheated a little bit. I don't want to mention the site that I'll mention. It's called bitcoinredemption.com. And I don't know if it's shady. I don't know if it's going to be around for a while. It worked for me. But basically, you send this guy Bitcoins, and he sends you either a Newegg or an Amazon gift card. And I thought for experimentations for the show, I'd give it a shot.
Right.
But I don't know if I'd recommend it to other people because I think it's just a dude exchanging stuff. Yeah, now there's your 5870. Now,
we bought two of these and a 6950.
That guy, this 5870, is really the sweet spot for performance versus
performance. Yep.
But you can't find them anywhere.
Performance per watt, the 6970, which is basically two 6870s sandwiched together, is about the same. It's slightly lower power usage, but it also comes slightly lower clock because of heat.
Yep.
If you can cool it efficiently, it's slightly better, but.
And a lot of people say if they downclock, I don't know if there's truth to that, but a lot of people say they can just downclock their video RAM because you don't really need it for mining.
Yes, the RAM, you can downclock that.
Did you experiment with that?
Yes, we did.
Did you notice a temperature difference?
It's not that big of a difference, but every little bit helps.
But I use the same machines for gaming, so.
Yeah, and it lowers the power utilization a little bit, specifically, so you don't have to don't overvolt the GPU quite as much.
No, that's almost worth it right there.
And the other thing you can consider is that the PCI Express slots you put the cards into don't have to be full 16x, because you're not using all that much memory bandwidth. So
unless you also use it for gaming, then But if you're just for mining, it's about getting it's about chewing on the data. Getting the data onto the GPU does not require a PCI 16 bandwidth slot.
Yeah, we're using a 16, an 8, and a 4 for our cards, and there's no performance difference between any of it.
There you go. So that's I guess our Bitcoin Blaster update segment. I'd like to hear what you guys out there are doing, and if you come across any awesome Bitcoin related stories or whatnot, don't forget about our links.techsnap.tv, the new subform over at Reddit that you can submit your stories directly to. Now, Alan, any other comments before we get to the viewers feedback segment?
No, we can do questions now.
All right, let's move on to questions. Send those things in to techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com or go to the new Reddit subforum, like I mentioned, and send in your questions, your war stories, and we'll read them here on the show. I will read our first question, and it comes from Mikhail, and he says, is there a way for me to tell if my machine has been compromised overnight, which fits in perfectly with our Bitcoin topic at the beginning of the show. What do you think, Alan?
Depends on your operating system, but yes. For Linux, there's an application called Tripwire. Or what I use is Bacula, which is a remote backup thing that we've talked a little bit about before.
Yep.
It has a type of a backup operation you can do called a verification, where it goes and compares a recent backup to the current system and looks for files that have changed. And this is what Tripwire does. Tripwire, the first time you run it. Yeah. So what Tripwire does the first time you run it is it does a hash of every file in certain directories, mostly your system files. And Bacula does this automatically as part of the backup. It does an SHA hash of all the files. So then what you do is each night or each morning or whatever, you compare the previous snapshot to today's.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, hey, these files have changed, right? They have different hashes now. So was there a reason for that, right? Did you update the OS? Did you install a new package? Did you update an existing package?
Right.
If you did, then that's okay. You can
You accept
that.
the changes, and there you go.
But if files are changing when they shouldn't have been, then you know something's up.
Now,
And
is there a free tripwire for Windows?
I don't actually know.
Yeah.
Bacula can do it, but it's kind of overkill for this specific setup. Actually, I have a link somewhere. In college, I wrote an essay on using Bacula as a tripwire type system.
Oh, cool.
Specifically because if you're doing a lot of machines, right? If you're doing just one machine, it's a lot of setup for nothing. But if you're, monitoring like 30 machines, having a central hash database is so much easier.
Yeah.
Because the downside to tripwire is if someone does compromise the system, they can either disable tripwire and you won't notice,
True.
or they can update the tripwire database to have the the new hash in it, so that
as long as they get the rights. Yeah, right? As long as they know it's there and
if
they get
rootkit the machine, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
With the Bacula thing, you're storing that information separately in a database on another machine, and that external machine is coming to your machine and monitoring it.
Right.
So that there's less chance of them being able to disable it.
And it's doing the comparison from what it already has in its database on the other system. Now,
which isn't stored on the local system. However, if there is a rootkit, you could make the file system lie and report the original file to the backup program and the hacked file to the execution.
Well, that's pretty serious,
but that's
isn't it?
really overkill, yeah.
What, I guess a quick tip, too, just to, depending on how you have... I'm going to assume he's on Windows just by chances of averages here. But one thing I would recommend is you can go into search for group policy if you're in Windows 7 or GP edit in the run box and turn on, go in there and add your local machine policy and turn on account auditing. And you then can go into your event log and you can see when people log into your machine. Now, if you see login events happening at hours when you wouldn't be using your machine, that's also a really quick flag. You won't guarantee see anything in there, but
in that setting, you can put failures in as well, so you can see people attempting to log in when they weren't able to.
But not a bad idea to audit successes, because if they are able to get on your machine, then that's considered as a successful login. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so event viewer is a quick one, or you can always check like var log messages on a Unix box or Linux box, and so that's a quick way to check. For
Linux. Depends on the type of Linux, but in CentOS, it's varlog secure, has the SSH log. In BSD, it's varlog auth.log.
And I would say, if you're really super paranoid about it for some reason, you could always try to find yourself an imaging solution so that you could keep known good images, so you could go back a day to a pre-hacked version, but you'd have to be sure you could fix whatever it was they were able to take advantage of.
Right.
Any other thoughts before we go on to the next one?
No, that's about it.
All right, I'll read the next question now. Thanks again for everybody that sent these in. This next question comes from Dale. He says, is continuing to use Dropbox safe if I use Truecrypt to encrypt my files before uploading them to the Dropbox cloud?
Yeah, I saw people suggest this numerous times.
Yeah.
And so while theoretically it is safe, right, people can't read your Truecrypted files, it doesn't work very well.
It's a pain in the butt.
Because of the way Dropbox works, which is called copy on write. So when you change a file, it doesn't delete the old one, it just makes a new one. Because with the way they do deduplication, someone else might still be using the data of the original version of the file.
Plus you might want to be able to revert. It also lets you revert back, too.
Right, exactly. Because they keep that version as part of their deduplication system, so it was no cost to them to add that feature to allow you to revert back.
Interesting.
So that means that every time you change a file in your Truecrypt volume, you have to re-upload the entire volume because it changes.
Yeah, and it's not like a typical file where Truecrypt or where Dropbox could just read like the changed bits, right? Because a Truecrypt volume would just look like all like noise to drop to the Dropbox.
Right, because it does cipher block chaining and things like that. The changes cascade and can change the file dramatically.
So if you have a large volume, that thing would change and have to upload every time you wrote to it.
Yes, and I'm not sure that Dropbox actually copies just changes. I think it has to recopy the whole file.
Oh, I think it does do changes. It'll do block level changes, but it might not on all OS.
But yeah, with Truecrypt, because of cipher block chaining, it's going every change is going to be amplified because of the encryption.
Yeah.
So unless you're only doing very small files or using a separate Truecrypt volume for each file, then it's really going to get unwieldy, and you're going to have, it's going to be slow and.
Yeah, I would say edit outside. I would say keep maybe a copy of the volume in Dropbox when you're ready to back it up.
Yeah.
You could do that, or you could set Dropbox not to start automatically, and so then like at the end of the night when you're done for the day, you would fire up your Dropbox agent and let it upload overnight or something like that.
But really, there are better solutions. Services like Dropbox where the client encrypts each file before it sends it.
Yep.
They lack that deduplication feature where you don't have to upload a file if somebody else has already uploaded it.
So they eat the storage cost.
The transfer cost, but that's required because your file doesn't look the same as the other person's file because they're encrypted separately.
Yeah.
Whereas Dropbox encrypts them only after they get it. So
should we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
All right, so a follow-up question from Mikhail. He says, how can I store users' files such that they are encrypted with the user's passwords, but can still be recovered if the password is lost or forgotten, which I'm sure happens all the time for Mikhail.
Yeah.
Because users do that.
The big problem with encryption is that the short answer is if you encrypt it properly, there is no way to recover from a lost password.
Right.
Right? When you're using strong cryptography, there's no recovery method. Not
if you're using like something like, I don't think Truecrypt offers it. Truecrypt might offer a master password recovery now, but the whole point is that there's only one way into the file.
Right, because there was a big uproar about it when PGP, the commercial version of GPG, they had a whole disk encryption system, but they had a way to recover the data if you forgot your password.
They had a backdoor, basically.
Yeah, so they had a backdoor in it, and that's bad. I don't want to use any encryption that has a backdoor.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so the question is, that's a trade-off.
Yeah.
I give up the ability to recover if I lose my key or my password.
Yeah.
But I want that because I don't want to have someone else be able to access my encrypted information.
Now, in the Microsoft world, you have the Windows encrypted file system, and in a domain system, you can have a master key server that the domain administrators still have keys over everyone's encrypted file system.
Right. So what's happening there is you're actually encrypting it to 2 keys instead of 1.
Right.
So then either one of those keys can access the information.
Yep.
And so, that's what you do.
You can do that. And I think there's a way to do that with Truecrypt as well.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Or pretty much any encryption system you can do it. Like with GPG, you can encrypt a message to multiple people.
Yeah.
Because that's how when we use GPG to encrypt our customers' credit cards, we encrypt it to 3 keys.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
So that way,
my personal key, my business partner's personal key, and then a company key for other people.
This
and
is
that
public,
way,
post it online public for on a Twitter feed. No. Why not? Put it on an RSS feed. Let people subscribe to that sucker. Yeah.
But really,
so that's what Windows does in the background.
Yeah. So your option here is to encrypt to 2 or more different keys. And one of those keys is the recovery agent, which is some person whose responsibility is to decrypt the files if the user loses a key. The thing is, this lowers the security because that means that the recovery agent could decrypt the user's files without the user's permission.
Right. Yep. That's always the risk.
In a corporate environment, that's why recovery agent isn't the same as administrator.
Right. So that way
because
not
the
too much
domain
power.
administrators, there might be information that management wants to have secret from IT. So they encrypt it with this, and the recovery agent is designated as someone maybe from some other department.
Right.
Who's not in the IT department.
Yep. I hate it when they do that.
And this prevents the IT department from having complete domination over all the protected information.
And where's the fun in that? Right? Where's the fun in that? I'm kidding. All right, ready for the next question?
Yeah.
All right, so Justin writes in, he says, how secure is it to enable text password reset token to your mobile phone? You know, like in Gmail, if you forget your password, you can have them text you a token. What do you think? How secure is that, Alan?
Really, that depends on how secure your phone is.
Right.
Some phones will actually display part of a text message when it comes in to allow you to preview it and decide if you want to read it right now, even if they're locked. And so that means if you left your phone somewhere, sitting on your desk or something, someone could reset your password and maybe see part of that reset token come up on the screen of your phone.
Right. Somebody might I spy that. But also with the Gmail, doesn't it just isn't that token just temporary? And then when you log in, it forces you to So that lowers the risk.
If you leave your desk and go to the washroom or to lunch or something, and you leave your phone at your desk, someone sits down.
Right.
And tries to reset your Gmail password, and they have your phone right there, they might be able to do that.
That's true.
Another thing is how quickly does your phone lock itself when it's inactive?
Right.
So if you're just using your phone and you set it down, if it doesn't lock until you've not used it for 10 minutes, that's not as good as if it locks after 30 seconds or something.
Google's just looking for a way to verify it's you, and this is kind of like their best of both worlds possibility. Plus, they get your phone number. It
prevents some remote attacker from being able to reset your password.
Right.
And it can definitely be more secure than some of those secret questions, like your mother's maiden name and stuff.
Yeah, or
Google allows you to set your own custom question and your own custom answer.
Which is always good.
And those can be much better. But you don't want those questions and answers to be anything somebody could find out from your Facebook account.
Right.
Or your Twitter feed or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, I'll tell you the most common thing when I walk into a client's office is I can sit down at their desk and I can almost always guess what either their password is or their secret question is based on whatever little knickknacks they collect, like if it's M&Ms or if it's butterflies or if it's frogs or if it's turtles. By the way, these are all real things. They've always been their passwords. I mean, it's so be cognizant of that you kind of, there's little tells that are there that people can pick up on. I could not count how many accounts I've logged into just by looking around their desk and seeing objects and then using that object's name as the password. It's pretty phenomenal. Ready for the next question or any more?
Not quite.
Okay.
It can even get more sophisticated than that. If on Twitter you're talking about, I went to some family reunion or something, even if you never said anywhere specifically what your mother's maiden name is, if the name of other people that are at your family reunion could give it away.
Right.
Or allow them to collect enough information to figure it out.
Right. And that kind of stuff's all over Facebook. It
depends on how big a target you are, but you have to be cognizant of all these different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing is, on your phone, can the unlock password be reset? Right? On most Android phones, you can use your Gmail account to reset the password on your phone if you lose it.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's handy, but also dangerous, I suppose, because if you leave your Gmail account up.
Right. Like we've said 100 times, if they compromise your email, they can get pretty much everything because everything uses email for password reset.
Amen to that. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Another thing is, some people share their phone with their girlfriend or a friend or whatever. So how many other people know your unlock code for your phone? Right, that's something to consider.
That is. Your sticky fingers all over the screen? Probably. Yeah. I know, that's always my problem.
And how easy is it to unlock, for the unlock code to be defeated? On some phones, you can just get around the unlock code.
Or use the sticky fingers technique.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know though. I mean, I feel like this is one of those where the risk, if you have good, if you have your phone in hand and you need to do this, the risk is probably worth it because it's only temporary, and if you can, if you've got it there, that's not so bad.
So basically, it depends on your level of paranoia. Basically,
right, you're worried about somebody walking up behind, like when you're not there, and hitting that option, and then just grabbing right off your phone and resetting your password. That's what you're worried about, right? Yeah. And I'm more thinking like I messed up and I forgot my password, but I guess the trick there is don't forget your password.
It's up to you. It's up to you to decide how secure you feel your phone is.
Right.
Or what level of risk you're willing to take.
Right.
Because in general, I think it's a good option. Because it's basically a second factor of authentication. You have your phone.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. All right. Next question time.
But and my last comment is,
all right.
I for one just don't forget my passwords.
That would be a good tip to go. Just patch, encrypt, don't be remote Trojaned, and don't forget your passwords. Those are all today's TechSNAP tips. There you go. All right. Now the next question came from Justin. I'm sorry, that was Justin's question. The next question came from Brother Lou, and old Brother Lou asked, "What's the difference between a NAS and a SAN? Also, in which environments would you use each?" I think this is probably a question that a lot of people have at least pondered and then sort of moved on, but I think maybe we could finally answer it here on TechSNAP.
And I think you might have a little bit more to add to the end of my answer here. But so a NAS, or network attached storage, is basically a dedicated storage device that you connect to your regular network.
Yeah.
Basically, it's something like a Drobo or just a file server, and it's just a device that goes on your regular network, acting as a regular PC on your network.
Yeah, you've seen there's like a Netgear has a few products, and
there's
so
lots
does Buffalo. Yeah.
And you can turn an old PC into one with something like FreeNAS, which does ZFS and is all fancy. Now, a SAN is basically the opposite. In a SAN, or a storage area network, it's a dedicated network just for storage devices. So basically, on say your server that's doing like virtualization, like we talked about the other week, it'll have one network card that will go out to your regular network with all the other machines, and then it will have a separate network that's just connected to the storage. And this means there's less contention, and that means 100% of the bandwidth of that network is for storage.
And you're not always necessarily using like Ethernet either. It could be over fiber.
Yeah, it could be fiber channel, or there's another one that starts something else.
So it's super. I mean, like back in the day, a lot of them were attached like over Ultra 320 SCSI, but that's kind of faded away. And there's, you know, the advantages with either or, I would say, is with a network attached storage, you do have the option, depending on the unit, to just make that your server. If you just need basic file services, a lot of them offer file sharing. You know, it's so there's different. You can see where that one is just it's a dumb disk on the network that anybody or just a few machines could access, whereas a SAN is dedicated to just a specific purpose to support the server infrastructure.
Because usually the communication protocol between the SAN and the machine is different. It's optimized for transiting storage, whereas Ethernet is optimized for communicating between a bunch of PCs.
Right.
So in general, SANs are much higher performance, but they are much more expensive.
Yeah, because once you start connecting a storage array via like fiber channel or something like that, you're talking you need to be fast through the entire chain, from the controller card in the server to the connection to the disk. So you'll start having 15,000 RPM drives in a RAID array, because you got to get every component of that set up very, very fast. And because you're dealing with so much data, they often have a lot of redundancies built in, like multiple controllers possibly, or multiple power supplies and things like that.
Yep, and then multiple links and, hot spares for your RAID, so that when a drive dies, you don't manually go and replace it. It grabs one of the spares out of its pool and starts and keeps the array alive. Especially when you're using something like RAID 5, where if two disks, if a disk dies and a second one dies before you replace the first one, the whole array goes away.
Oh, yes.
Right? So that's when you would want that hot spare, so that as soon as a disk dies, there's already one on deck to replace it.
And so you think about it, that kind of gives you an idea of the cost area you're talking about. When you set this thing up, you actually buy drives of equal capacity that just sitting there, not even being used. Just waiting
in case one dies.
You can imagine.
Because one will die eventually.
Right. So you can imagine the cost just when you can afford just to have a couple of drives in there. You're talking some high money here. With ReadyNAS, I was trying to remember the Netgear products. It's the ReadyNAS. Any other comments on that?
No, I don't think that's about it. But basically, the SANs are much more expensive, but they perform better.
Yeah.
But basically, it means it's an entirely isolated, separate network just for storage.
Yeah. Yep. And I think in my setups these days, I probably more and more go something it's like a combo of the two. It's a NAS because it's only on the network, and it's connected with iSCSI over Ethernet. And I might have like multiple hosts. So I might, like what I'll do, for example, in that scenario I talked about in my war story, is I'll have a dedicated storage LAN switch with each server having dedicated gigabit ports into that, and it's still a TCP IP network, but it's only doing storage, and that's another way to go. So it's kind of a mix.
Kind of a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
It's a NAS on a private network.
Yeah.
And it gives you some of the performance you would get from a SAN, but without the cost of the special hardware.
And some more flexibility, because if something's network addressable, you can have theoretically a lot more machines attached to it than when it's just a direct fiber connection or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, thanks everyone for sending those in, and go check out the new TechSNAP subreddit, or leave a comment in our inbox at techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. Now we're going to do something new on TechSNAP. We teased this a couple of weeks ago, and we decided that we're going to bring someone on the line and have them tell us their war story directly. So joining us over Skype is Ben. Hey there, Ben. How's it going?
What's up, guys?
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, dude, absolutely. We're excited to have our first Skype call in to tell us our war story. So, dude, lay it on us. What happened to you?
All right, so I have a client, and they had a production email server, and I was visiting them, and I heard the RAID. The RAID drives just clicking away, clicking and clicking and clicking, and I was like, that's not normal for the server right now.
Right.
So I logged in and I ran top, and I saw this Perl script that was just eating up 99.9% CPU. So I was like, oh shit, someone compromised my server.
Yeah.
I killed it, and I did PS-AUX and looked around to see kind of where it was, and the guy hid it in the most clever folder ever. The folder was named .space. So
so a pain to tab and a pain to see because it's hidden.
Exactly. If you do an ls-a on Linux, of course, you just get nothing with a dot that starts with a dot.
Right.
Or I'm sorry, just ls. If you do ls-a, you get the normal dot and dot, which are always there in every folder.
you always ignore the top couple because you know it's dot and dot dot.
Yeah, exactly.
And this one with dot space would be up at the top, and it would look like it fit in.
Like it totally fit in. It was totally normal.
Yep.
That's too funny.
So I CD'd into that directory, and it was a little Perl script running, and it had a separate text file, which was a list of 69,000 email addresses.
Whoa.
And it was just burning through these email addresses, mailing out PayPal phishing attacks.
Yep.
So coming from my clients, the verified email, all of these PayPal phishing were just like coming out and out and out. So
Wow.
I removed the threat, and it turned out they had gotten in through a weak user account. In this case, the client was not didn't have proper password policy, and their SSH was open, so someone had gotten in like that. But then
it's always the password, isn't it? It's always the password.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. But the problem was that this was their production email server, so I couldn't. Like, email was still being delivered, and if it went off for 6 hours, then they wouldn't be able to respond to their clients because emails were being delivered to that server. So that was a big issue. So what I ended up doing was I had to basically clean it as a live system because it had been configured for years. Before I was even in charge, there had been many, many configurations dumped into the system. So what I ended up doing was I took a backup. This machine was under backups from Backup PC. I know I don't like Bacula, but
I like Backup PC. I'm a Backup PC guy. I'm a big fan.
I'm a huge fan. So I took a tar.gz, a really, really early backup of this machine, and I dumped it on my Windows machine. And then I logged in with FileZilla, and I grabbed another image of the current existing machine, and then I basically pulled them up in WinMerge, and I diffed every single file on the entire system to see for compromises.
Yeah.
So you ran your own custom version of Tripwire, basically.
Basically.
Because if you don't have the snapshot of what the hashes of the file should be from before, then that's really your only option.
Yep. It's quick thinking.
So, thanks. And so I ended up seeing that they had installed a rootkit, which was messing with Top. The reason I knew that there was a rootkit in there was because Top wouldn't respond. Like when you press keys in Top, it's supposed to update the display quicker, and that wasn't happening. And Top would crash, and so I knew that some of the binaries had been modified. So it was Top, and then something in Netstat. They had modified Netstat so it wouldn't show a certain port, which they were like, I don't know, using for something or whatever. Yep. So I just grabbed all the different files, threw them back on the server using FileZilla, and didn't have to worry about reinstalling Linux or any of that stuff.
Right, just overwrote the bad executables. And, it's a good tip to mention, too, that they go after the common tools you use. That's a pretty common thing because they just assume you're going to be able to fire those off and you're going to want to, use those tools to figure out what's going on.
Exactly.
It's always hilarious when they tried Linux rootkits on my BSD machines.
That doesn't probably work too well.
Yeah, it's like, no, you wonder why your tool's crashing.
Well, Ben, I mean, man, thanks for calling in and telling us and being our first Skype war story. Now, you have a podcast of your own. Why don't you tell folks about where they can find you?
It's called the Port Forward Podcast. You can find us over at www.portforwardpodcast. Also, you can search over in iTunes or whatever. And it's a great podcast. We talk about Linux, rootkits, password security, all the fun stuff. I think your listeners will be a big fan.
Right on, man. Well, thanks so much. And if you'd like to get on the show and send us your war story, use any of the messages to send it in. And one of the things Ben did here, because he was an extra go-getter, he also sent us an audio sample, which was awesome. Of course, I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but he followed up with me in the chat room.
I think it was a clip from his own podcast.
Oh,
yes,
well done.
It was. Thank you for noticing. I put little bumpers on the end and just send it to you guys.
Oh, awesome. I'll give it a listen. Thanks for doing that. That's really cool. Yeah. I love hearing from people that are doing podcasts like that. So
you guys inspired me. So
right on, Ben, right on.
I think the important takeaway there is that on top of strong passwords for your users, you also need something like denihosts.py, a little Perl or Python script that will automatically ban IPs from connecting to your SSH if they keep hammering away at it.
Good.
Or
good
there's other apps like fail to ban and so on.
Yeah.
But the one I use is denihost because it has the option for a distributed database where if 10 other machines find an IP trying to break into their SSH, you can ban it before they even make the first attempt against you.
That's very cool.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good tip. All right. Well, Ben, thanks for calling in, man.
Thank you guys so much. Awesome.
Yeah, you bet. Alan, are you ready to try something new?
Sure.
As we wrap up the episode here, we're going to go through a lightning news round, stories that didn't quite make it into the main show, but we still wanted to give you a mention. Of course, links to these will be in the show notes. I'll read the first one here. The Senate is preparing a bill that will require permission from phone manufacturers and telco networks to collect location information on you. Now, I think, Alan, what was it like TechSNAP 1 or 2? We covered the iPhone tracking story.
Right. So the idea here is that applications and websites and your phone company can't collect your location data and use it against you without your permission.
So that's cool. It's actually cool to see the Senate passing a law that actually protects our privacy, so that's awesome. Next story, Alan, is yours, sir.
Yes. The Senate website and CIA.gov were hacked, and LulzSec claims it was them.
Womp womp. What do you think? Do you think LulzSec did it?
Probably.
Yeah, boy, they're really tempting the beast here, aren't they? They're like just waving that red flag in front of the bull.
Yeah,
all right.
Because they got the FBI, the NATO, and now the CIA and the Senate.
Yeah. Now, following up another story here in the lightning news round, LulzSec wanting to rub it in the man's face, tweeted out earlier this week, aim the cannon for us, and on their Twitter feed, they gave out a phone number you could call in and ask a certain site or service to be DDoSed. So LulzSec was taking requests. How do you like that?
Basically, what happened was they started getting phone bombed. People didn't like what they were doing and would call in. They were getting 30 calls a second.
Good.
So then they just redirected their phone number to the main switchboard at the FBI.
Adorable. That's all right. Now, is the next one yours? I already lost track. I think the next one's yours.
Yes. LulzSec started doing denial of service attacks on EVE Online and Minecraft.
Yeah, no, that sucks, right? Why?
Yep.
I almost just feel like LulzSec is, I don't know, just being a huge D-bag, and it's just all about, I don't know if it's one person or if it's multiple people.
It comes from their name, right? They're in it for the lulz. They're just out there to be a giant troll.
I'm mixed, because it is also good to point out these critical flaws in this more and more important infrastructure that we're building on all the time. So you don't want to build this whole new online system with all these holes in the foundation, but at the same time, I don't want the federal government to crack down like a maniac in response to LulzSec. So I'm a mixed emotional guy. All right, the next one is mine, and I thought this one was sort of interesting for TechSNAP, and maybe we'll dig into this in the future. Ex-Googler. Now that he's not working for Google, he gets all vocal about Google's infrastructure and calls Google's infrastructure obsolete. He says it's based on a bunch of old Java crap, and it's at best 10 years old, and that it's going to be one of Google's major problems going forward is their infrastructure is really old. I've never heard that before.
Specifically, he's talking about Bigtable and a couple of other things that basically everything they have is based on.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, there's nothing better out there. So
maybe Google will invent it then.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to do it.
There's a lot of open source projects out there trying to replicate Bigtable.
Yeah.
And be like it.
Yeah.
And, unless one of those somehow surpasses the actual Bigtable, I don't know that you can say that it's obsolete. Because I don't know anything that's better.
That was my takeaway too.
It may be old and it may be a kludge, but it's the only thing there is.
Right. It's what we got. All right, Alan, the last lightning story is yours, sir.
Yes. A sophisticated cyber attack is being reported by the IMF. They're saying they're under attack.
Yeah, they called this one like a prolonged constant threat, or whatever they call that there.
The advanced persistent threat?
Yeah, advanced persistent threat, and they believe it has the markings of another nation, like a government sponsored from another nation attack. That kind of smells like bullcrap to me, but whatever. I don't.
Well, no, it can be the same type of attack. Remember, we talked about the advanced persistent threat against RSA.
Yeah.
Right. These guys specifically targeted RSA and were doing, phishing attacks, island hopping, and basically managed to break in and steal the information that it turned out compromised all RSA secure ID tokens.
Right. Now, but that makes sense. Why target the IMF?
Sophisticated attacks.
I don't know.
Well, it turns out that the attack on RSA was to target military contractors.
That's true.
Again, that's a target that a foreign nation would go after.
That's true.
And then the IMF, right? That's the International Monetary Fund. They have financial data on all kinds of places.
Yeah.
Both of these seems, I'm not pointing a finger right away, but both these seem like things like governments that have sanctioned cyber armies like China would be going after.
I agree, but it also could be political positioning. You always got to watch for that too. So it's
it could just be like we were saying, this false flag stuff. Yeah. Creating this, the internet's dangerous.
Creating an environment that needs regulation.
Exactly. It could just be the government trying to get people scared enough that they'll accept ridiculous, an internet version of the Patriot Act.
Well, and like the Protect IP Act is like in a lot of ways. Yeah. All right. Well, that was our first try at the TechSNAP lightning round, and we'd like to know what you guys think. And leave a comment or start a discussion thread, whatever the heck you feel like it. And TechSNAP, just a reminder, will be live next Wednesday at 1 p.m. And then we'll release on our regular Friday morning time slot. And we'd love for you to go over there and subscribe to one of the RSS feeds and download any version and any format of the show on demand as soon as it's released using your favorite RSS catcher. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you next Friday.